Our next speaker is one of my West partners, Serena Kahn, Vice President of Programs at the Women's Foundation of California, and she's going to share with us the findings of our most recent report. So Serena, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks Jennifer, and I also want to echo my thanks to the Women's Bureau at the Department of Labor for being on the call, and really to everybody who's with us today. We, as you know, are releasing our report, which is titled Aiming Higher, Removing Barriers to Education, Training, and Jobs for Low-Income Women. And in this report, we really do three things that I want to point to. The first is we're raising up key statistics that have to do with women in the recession and really call attention to the importance of a different approach to helping low-income women achieve economic security and really economic prosperity. And the second thing that we're doing is providing concrete examples of programs that are funded by members of the Women's Economic Security Campaign that really help to address the barriers faced by low-income women in obtaining education, training, and jobs that are family supporting. And the third is to identify specific recommendations for policymakers and women's funds of ways to act on these lessons learned. So we're just going to move to the next slide, in which to focus on the recommendations around women and the recession. And what we know is that women are unemployed. So while men have faced profound job losses during this recession, unemployment rates for women who had households are really much higher than those for other households. In March of this year, the unemployment rate for women who maintain families was at 11.3%, which is the highest rate in the past 25 years. And by comparison, the unemployment rate for all women was 8.6%, and for married men it was 8.1%, and for married women it was 6.7%. We also know that women of color have been especially hard hit. In March of 2010, the unemployment rate for white women was 7.3% compared with 12% for Latino women and 12.4% for African American women. The other thing that we want to point to is that women are working in jobs that don't pay family-sustaining wages. So even women with jobs really have a hard time earning a living wage. In 2008, for example, 69% of all workers ages 25 and older with earnings at or below the minimum wage were women. There are approximately 3.5 million single mothers with children who are living in poverty in the United States, and we know that income and poverty vary, significantly by family structure. So generally, poverty rates are higher for families with children than other families, and for single households than married households. But the highest poverty rates are experienced really by single female-headed households with children. And in doing this research and also in our work, we know that there are clear pathways out of poverty. And so I just want to pause for a moment because I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. So I just want to remind people to put your phones on mute if you have a mute function on your phone, or I think it's *6, is it? Okay, thank you. So, so in terms of moving in terms of strategies to address issues of poverty faced by women, we really think that this is a particularly critical moment for our country, for the government, for philanthropy, as well as private entities and community-based organizations have an opportunity to work together to ensure that low-income single mothers are not left behind by economic recovery. We really think that we are in danger of repeating the mistakes of the past if our current national focus on job creation, on training, and education doesn't include a discussion about how to develop new and different opportunities that allow women to aim higher and to create a promising future for themselves and their families and their communities. If we fail to directly confront the unique struggles that they're facing, low-income single mothers and their children are going to remain really mired in poverty for decades to come. So confronting the problem is really vital to the U.S. economy, to seeking to regain our global competitive edge. And our economy, we know, won't prosper if we fail to invest in programs and services that provide greater opportunity for all members of society. So I want to focus a little bit on some promising practices. And the report recommends the strategies for helping women achieve more promising futures for themselves and their children. And I'll tell you a little bit about them now, but I'm really going to leave it to our two program partners who are going to speak next to provide some specific examples and additional details. What we know is that through our work in the Women's Economic Security Campaign, we have discovered strategies in our local communities by supporting and working with our grant partners and other partners in our regions that are really working to support low-income women to create a promising future for themselves and their children and their communities. And in order to do that, we know that we need to connect women to programs and services that make education and employment possible. And so these supports include child care, they include transportation, housing and health services. These are things that are critical for single low-income mothers who are struggling to balance work, training or education, as well as family responsibilities. So when these supports fall through, low-income students and workers are likely to drop out of school, they're likely to quit their jobs, which further limit their progress toward economic security. So effective strategies to confront these problems include things like hands-on case management and counseling, which are aimed at connecting women to vital supports and services so they can thrive on the job and in education and training programs. They also include ongoing support for women who are trying to navigate complicated rules in TANF or temporary assistance for needy families and other programs that really make it difficult to advance their education and create an economically secure future. We also know that we need to provide women with opportunities for work experience and on-the-job training. So limited previous work experience and opportunities for on-the-job training really pose a major barrier to low-income women who are hoping to improve their future employment options. So we know that some effective strategies to help solve this problem include transitional employment programs that provide job experience while at the same time offering hands-on support and training. We know that we need to support low-income women to develop career pathways rather than simply taking any available job that they can. That we really need to think about sort of a long-term career pathway. And we also need to think about overcoming resistance to higher-paying jobs in male-dominated fields like construction by focusing on training programs, on the specific barriers that women face in entering into these kinds of career opportunities. And then we know that to increase opportunity, we really need to focus on employer needs. And so in order to increase economic security, training and education should be tied to the real local employment opportunities. And some effective strategies here might include linking training to employer needs, focusing on occupations and industries that offer the best opportunities for advancement, and creating more and better jobs in low-income neighborhoods where women live and learn and are in their communities.